So as we start the second video of Avengers, I thought it was important to show that Tony Stark can kind of fly. And he can kind of fly really well. It puts the LEGO Avengers flight system to shame how well Tony controls in the air. And I just wanted to bring that to attention before we grab the motorcycle. That just seemed important to bring up. Because as this is sort of an open world game, there are going to be vehicles that you can use to get from one place to the next. They're not as convenient as Tony's flight.
Will show you what's around you. Yellow dots mark the location of your mission objectives. You can also use your radar to locate mission givers, enemies, and items of interest.
And in this game, convenience of movement is kind of important because a lot of the objectives take place like on buildings or in places that are very difficult to get to with a motorcycle. As you can see, the motorcycle had trouble getting up those steps. And this is nothing compared to Tony's flight speed, never mind the fact that he can, move over obstacles. It's true that cars are no match for the motorcycle at least, but the motorcycle also doesn't control particularly well.
See? That wasn't so hard. It's just like riding a bike, if a bike had a powerful next-gen turbo motor.
I feel happy. Winning does that to me.
If you need a ride, find one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s transportation request stations. They'll hook you up. Now, you better help Jarvis stabilize the tower security. Once that's done, you'll head into the fight.
All frost giants have been expelled from the tower, but we must restore full power to activate defensive security systems. Locate the emergency power overrides within the area of Avengers Tower and activate them.
I should mention that the motorcycle seems to exist solely as a means to get Black Widow from place to place, as she is one of the playable characters that comes with the game. But, the motorcycle can't fly. So it really just deters you from playing as her at all. Hey look, it's the Frost Giants, and there's even a new one this time. There's the basic one right over here. And the new guy, which is slightly more armored, that we'll see in a moment. He can actually punch the... All of them can throw icicles at us, but the new guy can actually punch the ground and cause a tremor of ice to follow us around. Most of the time we're fighting enemies with Tony, we're going to be backing away from them and shooting, while using the special over-the-shoulder camera. That's what most of these fights are going to be. Sometimes we're going to hop in the air and slam down at them, but most of the time we're just going to be doing this. And it's going to go a lot faster when we get upgrades for Tony's repulsors. As you've seen, it's also possible to fire with Tony while we're in the air, and there is a soft lock-on while we're doing that. And it's definitely ideal for some situations, but it's also easier for most just to shoot them while we're on the ground. You got to see that guy use his ice trimmer like I promised. I have never once actually been hit by that attack, or most of the attacks from the weaker Frost Giants. Usually they hit me with their projectiles, rather than their specials. You might notice there's occasionally a number at the top of the screen telling us how many Frost Giants we've defeated, but that number goes up or down depending on how many Frost Giants spawn during the fight, so it's not particularly useful because it changes so much. The enemies for this mission are kind of scattered all over the place, and there's only 2 enemy types to work with so far in the game. So there's not a lot to this fight.
It's of the utmost importance that you activate the power overrides around the tower.
Tony leveled up again, and with his skill tree we're mostly going to be going for his repulsors, leveling those up and making those stronger. Occasionally some health upgrades as well. Because Tony is kind of squishy, in spite of being inside armor. We just have to repeat this process where we defeat a bunch of Frost Giants and press a button 2 more times. Not much changes between those, though the second and third buttons are in more cramped spaces. That does make fighting a tiny bit harder, but not enough so that the average person would notice the difference. Especially not for the second button where you can still easily fly over everybody. But after we press it and head to the third one, you're going to see the third one thankfully does mix things up in a way that is actually more noticeable. It takes place in between 2 buildings, and there's very little room to move around even while you're flying. I wouldn't say there's too little room so that you couldn't do it, but it is harder. That being said, most of the strategy in this game doesn't come from the individual fights, but rather how you level up your characters, and here I was trying to get the missile barrage, but we don't have enough points for that yet. We will next time we level up. This game does actually get pretty difficult, and there are some missions I don't think I could have finished as a kid, and thus wouldn't have been able to finish the game. But it really just depends on how you level everyone up. Of course, as a kid, I would also be playing this cooperatively, which would have made it quite a deal easier.
Power restored. Activating stock security protocol, J5932.
Oh yeah, I'm not hating this.
Now we do actually have enough skill points to buy the missile barrage, so we're going to do that right away. Missile barrage is basically an area clearing attack that we can use from a distance, unlike most area clearing attacks, which makes it very useful.
Are you up for a real challenge?
Sometimes extra missions that we can do for no other reason than just to do them appear across the map, and they're not particularly fun. They're just really basic races and stuff, and although I do love races in open world games, the controls for vehicles aren't particularly great. And I say this as someone who adored the extra missions in LEGO Marvel Superheroes. I 100%ed that. So there's something kind of wrong. And you thankfully won't have to worry about it because we're just going to be doing all the main missions, of which there are 35, but it seems like a lot more than that by the time you get done. It's possible to choose which main mission you want to do next, and we chose the one with Jarvis.
To show much of the city's power grid is offline. Resetting the power stations located throughout the city should restore energy to the civilian population.
You've received a new mission. All of your active missions will be tracked in your mission log. Check your mission log at any time to view your current missions, or activate your mission guide.
This mission is a lot like the previous one, except now the buttons are on buildings, which instantly makes it a lot better. There are also icicles all over the place, which can impede our shots sometimes, but we can also blow them up just by landing next to them. Now, for the most part, we can just hop from button to button. There's supposed to be frost giants that spawn while we're trying to hit the button, but if we hit it fast enough, we can just, leave immediately. It helps that you can hit it just by ramming your face into it, as I demonstrated. You are not actually required to destroy any of the frost giants to complete this mission, all the buttons just have to be pressed, so I prefer this hit-and-run strategy, especially since this is one of the few missions where the objective isn't destroy all the frost giants. I guess it might be a bit more difficult if you're unaware that you can press the button just by slamming into it, and you thought you had to stand next to it and press square. But now you know. This is a pro speedrunning strat right here.
Well done, sir. The city's power grid is back online.
Now that that's out of the way, it's time for something slightly more interesting. We're going to go talk to Nick Fury for our first mission with him. Bringing him the motorcycle didn't really count.
Welcome back. So, the Frost Giant rampage has left the streets out of order and our troops can't get through. Clear path for S.H.I.E.L.D., and I'll talk with our transportation team about a severe lack of bulldozers.
I find this mission particularly fun because it's enjoyable to smash into the center of a bunch of ice and watch it all explode. Of course, sometimes there needs to be a bit of extra force applied, but it's still really satisfying. Now, the goal here is, again, not to destroy the Frost Giants, it's just to clear a path so that way S.H.I.E.L.D.'s team can get through. And something I like about this mission, which I'm certain is intentional but isn't necessarily important, is that this mission ends where another one begins. Not story-wise, but location-wise. In spite of our goal not being fighting this time, this next batch of ice does contain a group of frost giants. We're mostly going to ignore them in favor of actually destroying the ice. But after we do destroy the ice, I'll try and take them all out in one shot using that special attack we bought a bit ago, because there hasn't been an opportunity to use it yet. Of note, if you accidentally ram into the ice instead of into the ground next to the ice, Tony will fall over very briefly. But that's not really much of a deterrent. Interestingly enough, the missiles in the missile barrage do seem to home in on the enemies, so it's very useful as a close-range and long-range attack. I much prefer the missile barrage over Thor's special attack, which we won't see for a while still, but Thor is definitely easy to play the game with overall. Tony may have versatility, but sometimes versatility isn't what you need. What you need is the ability to hit things real good. I love how shamelessly this mission is just about smashing ice and watching it explode.
Finished already? I hope you didn't rush just for me. Agents, move out.
Well, now I'm even cooler. Thanks.
On our way back to Nick Fury, we're going to stop, and I'm going to show off the environmental damage very briefly. So every building in this game can take damage. You can blow holes in every wall in the game, literally every single structure, unless you're in a dungeon, as it were. And this is actually really cool, because you can do things like this. Just leave a whole streak of damage. It is true that basically you're just replacing one texture with another by dealing damage to the wall, so it's not technically impressive, but it is a nice touch.
Frost giants are attacking a nearby bridge, and there's a busload of civilians trapped in their wake. You need to deal with those frost giants and get the bus across the bridge to safety.
Oh hey, it's our very first escort mission, of which there are surprisingly few in this game. This is also the only escort mission where the escort can't take damage, which makes it very strange, but I do appreciate the use of a set piece. The bridge will actually get damaged and fall apart, and it's got ice growing all over it. A lot more interesting than the cityscape we've seen so far. At the heart of the mission, though, we're just going to be shooting a whole bunch of dudes. It's a normal wave-based destroy all the enemies mission, just with the addition of a truck full of people that sometimes screams when it gets hit, but will never actually be destroyed. I do enjoy the playstyle I employ with Tony, where it's like some sort of weird tower defense, but we're the only turret. We are destroying the enemies rather slowly, I suppose, but when we get the next upgrade to our repulsors, it will go a lot faster. And we should have that upgrade by the end of this video, though we won't see it in action for a bit. We are going to be using Thor next time after all. Give him his time to shine. We're going to be regularly switching between the two, either between videos or when missions ask for a specific set of skills. There are some missions that are easier with Tony, and some missions that are easier with Thor. And eventually the game will get difficult enough for those differences to actually matter, but only for a few spare missions. This is a very, very casual action game. You don't have to think or try too hard. After the enemies are gone, we have to destroy the ice around the bus, and the bridge will actually fall apart and crumble as we do so. It will usually crumble in favor of the bus, but still, it's nice that things like that happen at all. It's a neat touch. Stops the environment from seeming too static. And it is rather difficult for me to get tired of smashing the ice. More frost giants will appear as soon as we free the bus. And until we destroy them, the bus isn't going to move forward. We also have to destroy that piece of rubble in the bus's way, in case the yellow arrow pointing to it didn't make that clear. And I like using Tony for this mission in particular because of this. There may not be a lot of room on the bridge, but we can just fly around the bridge as much as we want, and nobody's going to get in our way. With Thor, it's a lot more difficult to fly around the bridge and attack enemies because, well, Mjolnir doesn't come back as fast as we can fire again with Tony. You can still use the hammer as a decent combo ender or to get enemies away from something you're protecting, but you can't use it as a main method of offense like you can with Tony's repulsor blasts. The people in the bus cheer as we destroy the rubble. I wouldn't feel as safe driving over that, but I guess they don't have much choice. And the people freak out again as, up ahead, ice blocks the road and more frost giants appear. And it would be nice if protecting civilians was a bigger part of the game, because for the most part, civilians are just props. There are a couple of missions later where you have to take civilians to safety, but they don't scream or react like the people here do. And most of the things they say are just for humorous effect.
Great. The bus should be able to make it to a safe house from here. Fury here. What? Oh, you got to be kidding.
Not too
Stand by,
shabby.
Avengers. I'll be contacting you shortly.
Hey guys, Wasp here. I know you're busy and all, but do you think you can help me out a bit? I'm having a tough time breaking through the layer of ice the frost giants coated my apartment with.
Sometimes the game will provide missions that will start without our explicit permission, and this is one of those times. Usually it doesn't matter too much because there's nothing to do in the open world anyway. And I do love destroying ice. In spite of the main objective being to destroy ice again, we do actually have to fight frost giants this time. And as you can see, there's a new enemy type. The larger frost giants with spears are notable in that they're actually kind of challenging to fight, especially if you're going with melee combat. Unlike the basic enemies, which you can just pound on over and over, the larger frost giants are capable of knocking you around pretty easily, and they have a really long range. What I'm saying is that, although you could reasonably just button mash to get to this point, you can't just button mash the larger frost giants or you will die. They deal significant damage, about a quarter of your health on each hit. Thankfully with Tony we can stay at a distance and just use our repulsor blasts, and it's less a question of challenge and more a question of patience. There are a couple of capsules around this area with health or purple orbs that we can use to refill our special meter. But I'm more concerned about how Wasp is going to get inside her apartment. It looks like we destroyed the ice, but the place still seems pretty uninhabitable as it is right now. Especially considering that if we accidentally shoot the building, we can see that the inside is actually just a bunch of rubble. So that's no good. I hope all the people in there escaped in time. It actually turns out not to matter too much either way, because immediately after this mission, Wasp just goes and does superhero stuff. I guess she forgot that she needed in her apartment for some reason, and she just decides she doesn't want to anymore. I suppose you could make the argument that these frost giants needed to die either way because they're obstructing traffic, but you just saw that car drive right around it twice. 2 cars in a row right around that frost giant, so I think everybody's perfectly fine, all things considered.
Bet you didn't see that coming. Thanks for the help, guys. Whew. Now I know how leftovers feel.
Don't suppose you know what Loki's game is, do you?
Afraid not. I tried to fight my way out, but there was this many of them and one tiny me.
Yeah, the frost giants paid us a little visit too.
That's just it. The frost giants didn't show up until later. It just got really cold all of a sudden.
Frost giants become more powerful in colder climates. Perhaps there's another force at play here.
If Loki's freezing the city in order to beef up his snowmen, Wasp, why don't you do a little reconnaissance? See if you can find out how Loki's freezing the city.
Aye, aye, Captain. I always wanted to say that.
Yes! Well, now I'm even cooler. Thanks.
Bad guys don't take a vacation, rookie. Let's go.